time at the start. Welcome to the first in this Business Mastery for Leaders online program. I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about where the concept for this came from, why we're running it this year in 2024, and then get straight into today's topic, which is the secret cycles that stimulate or hold a business back, and how you can be implementing those in your role and in your business. Key things throughout the workshop today. If you've got questions, feel free to jump in at any point in time. You can either unmute yourself, jump in that way if you're bold enough. We've got a little bit of a group, which is fantastic, or use the chat function to pop up and ask a question in there, and then I'll work that into the agenda as I'm going. If you ask a question which is 5 minutes ahead of something we're already going to discuss, then I might not get to your question until then, and there'll also be some time at the end to go through those. This will be made available as a recording for those. I know there's some of you that can't do the full time live today, and some of you who would have colleagues that weren't able to make it. So the full recording will be made available, and you can then watch that on 1.2, 1.5, or even 2.0 speed to make yourself more efficient. For those who don't know me, I'll get out of the way so you don't have to see too many versions of my face. So a little bit of background. I've got an interesting and varied career and background, quite the media tart, and so I do enjoy running any opportunity to get up in front of a group and have a conversation. But this program comes from the second last of those points that I've got, which is around the 350 plus businesses that I've coached one-on-one around the world over the last 20 years of my career. Most of my clients, most of the businesses I work with, and this will be familiar to pretty much everyone who's on the workshop today, they've had a degree of success. The business owners have taken some risks. They've started a business, or they've invested in a business to help it grow, taken some risks, got that success, and built a team, at which point they've realized that despite having some success, what they really want is much bigger than that. They recognize that they've got an opportunity to leverage the successful, happy clients, profitable business that they have into something much bigger, to make a much bigger impact on their team, their clients, their community. And they're willing, as business owners, to take risks, to invest back into the business instead of just coasting along, for the pursuit of some future freedom for their family, whatever that might mean. But the risk that they have, the challenge is what got them here isn't what's going to get them there. To create that real impact and freedom business, they've got to undo a lot of the things that have made them successful. And that can be quite scary. What if you lose what you've built as opposed to creating something bigger and better? And so that's why they look to work with individuals like me who can help them across the whole range of areas in the business, to give them the confidence of what that journey looks and feels like. What steps do they need to make? To give them the courage to take those risks, to trust themselves and their management team, and to implement the right 1% of changes that are going to make the biggest difference. And of course, you can't implement the right changes in a business if you don't have a good leadership and management team around you. And so something that I've always offered my clients while I've been working with them, and my alumni clients, which is quite a list after almost 20 years, is you will have new managers, you will have people who get promoted. You and your team will forget some of the key concepts, frameworks, discussions that we've had. You've invested in working with me as your business coach, and part of that investment is the long-term return, which means I am always willing to come back into your business to help give you a refresher, to run you back through some of the concepts, to see where your team is at. And as the group of alumni clients that I've had has got bigger and more global, the need, which is why we've started this program this year, is to push this online, to invite all of those businesses to come and join and to have a little bit of a refresh. And I wanted to start this workshop talking about one of my favorite topics, which is a whole lot of the different cycles that exist within a business, within an organization. So our agenda through till 11, little over an hour and 20 minutes from now, we're going to talk about island time. We're going to talk about why work-life balance is the wrong goal. We're going to get into some best practice management rhythms for your business. I know some of you are implementing some of these. Some of you have seen this training recently. Some may not for some time. We're going to talk about 3 key cycles which all weave together to impact an organization, which are cash flow cycles, some of the economic cycles, and the broader business life cycle that organizations go through over a period of many decades. It can be very difficult for specialist managers when you've got to focus, you can see the direction the organization's trying to head in. It can be very difficult to understand why things are not happening the way that you want. The frustration that comes in, particularly if you're not the business owner, if you're not exposed to all the different areas of the business. And so the 2 key things I want everyone to take away from this workshop are, 1, a key understanding of how these different cycles moving at their own pace bump into each other at various points in the business journey and impact what might seem like an easy decision or an easy strategy. And then to give you some specific tools that you can be using, not just with that awareness, but to be able to apply. To help us all to focus, I would like to invite us to start with a very, very brief grounding meditation. Those who've done a lot of my workshops in the past, you'll know that this is something that I often look to do to get us all in the room, to get us all grounded. So I'd invite you, if you're comfortable, uncross your arms, uncross your legs, close your eyes, and just draw attention to your breathing. Just concentrate on how deeply you're breathing in and breathing out. Your breath is the connection between your conscious and your subconscious minds. Most of our days are spent breathing subconsciously. We breathe in, we breathe out thousands of times a day without even being aware of it. And that keeps our body level, rhythmic, and obviously pumps the oxygen through our body that we need. It is one of the fastest, most fundamental natural cycles in our body, breathing in and breathing out. And we can draw attention to it sometimes when we find that our brain, particularly our frontal cortex, our thinking brain, is overwhelming us, is taking us away from that natural rhythm. So if you feel you're grounding, feet, the chair perhaps underneath you, and I want you to listen out and imagine yourself at Matanavusi Surf Resort in Fiji, sat on the beach of the Coral Coast, just with your eyes closed, sitting there, listening to the sound of the waves and focusing on your own breathing. As the waves are coming in and the waves are going out, so too your breath coming in and going out. And despite all of the things that are out there in the ocean, all of the things that are up there in your mind, you do have that ability at any point to just be mindful of the waves right in front of you, to use your breath to bring you back to this present moment. The present moment is the only one we do actually experience. And in this presence, you can have the awareness, you can make the decisions, you can make changes that may be necessary to improve your role, your business, or your life. And once you're feeling grounded and present, I invite you to take 2 more deep breaths in and out. And on the second breath, push the palms of your hands together, open your eyes, and join us as we bang through what is quite a thorough agenda. So I wanted to start there on the coral coast of Fiji, thinking about the waves coming in, your breath, your presence, and use that as a connection through to these 3 different types of time, and understanding how our view of time in the Western world is not the only view of time which is possible. If you've ever been on a holiday to Fiji or Bali, or even perhaps some of the Mediterranean countries, you might have come across island time, where nothing ever seems to run particularly efficiently, where you can order your fourth cocktail of the morning and get frustrated because it takes so long to actually arrive, where you think to yourself, boy, if they just brought in some management systems, if they had some respect for their clients, if they had a customer service ethic, then this resort would run so much better. This island would run so much better. And what that is doing, well, it's a natural response, normally lasts a couple of days of that 2-week holiday that you might be lucky enough to have. What that normally comes from is trying to apply the Western view of time, which we are raised in here in Australia, UK, the US, a lot of the Commonwealth countries where I do most of my work. We think of time as linear. Time flies like an arrow. And so, when you think of your organization, you think of your business plans, it's this month, this quarter, this year, next month, next quarter, next year, all moving forward in a direction towards some kind of goal. When we go into a meeting, we'll have an agenda and we'll look to move through the items on that agenda. You've got a to-do list for this week or a strategic plan for the next 90 days in your organization. It's about moving through that towards a destination. And that feels very, very natural and normal to us, but it is not the only way that we can approach time. The island time is the middle one on that diagram. It's the flow. Time is more polychronic, where we think of linear time as monochronic, where we're doing one thing at a time, we're moving one step forward in a direction. Polychronic flow time thinks of all of those tasks as happening simultaneously. Over the course of a day or a week or a year, there's less separation between those and more of a flow between them. Time may flow like that river, but you could be stepping in and out of the river at any point in time. And a lot of those cultures have a great value on socializing, on community. And so for them, taking 4 hours to have lunch with their family and their friends, or stopping on the way to making your cocktail to check in with another guest and have that conversation, it's not a delay to the task. It's all part of how they multitask, polychronic, get multiple things done at the same time. And that flow can lead to much more of a relaxing culture when you're not caught up in the linear, how do I get the most out of this minute, this hour? And there's a third type of time, which is more predominant in Eastern Asian countries, China, Korea, Japan. The culture is naturally much more around these cycles and these rhythms. The focus there is often to take more time to complete a task because there's less of a deadline when things move in cycles. When today, this week is going to follow the same cycle as tomorrow or next week, there's less pressure to get things done today because that cycle will come back. And if I do it well, it might happen later. It might happen on the next iteration of a cycle or the cycle after that, but it's done well, it's done better, and we can continue to move forward to the extent that we're moving forward in a larger cycle within those little cycles. And something that I've found working with a whole lot of organizations is that understanding those cycles that do occur and building a lot of management leadership around those cycles is a key way to make sure that you as a group, as a management leadership group, are working together and are achieving things. Many people pursue work-life balance, and it's seen as an ideal, and it's also a very linear way of approaching things. I'm going to do the right amount of work this week, and then I'm going to have the right amount of personal time. I'm going to do the right amount of this activity so that I can have the right amount of that activity. And if I'm not doing the right amounts in any given time frame, then I'm out of balance, I'm out of whack, and everything's going to fall off the bike. My contention, my experience is that work-life balance is a bit of a myth, and it's a mistake. It's the wrong thing for us to pursue as humans, because we go through cycles, we go through seasons. Trying to maintain this balance is not our natural state. Much more natural to us as humans is to have this rhythm, these cycles, where there might be periods where you're working much harder, and there might be periods where you're working less. And some of those are going to be on a weekly basis, and some of those are going to be on a quarterly or an annual basis. And some of those are going to be over the period of your career as you perhaps change roles or get promoted or look towards retirement at some point. And then even as we're living longer and longer, that traditional idea of I'm going to work for 40, 50 years and then I'm going to retire for a bit, and that's the right balance, starts to get out of whack because we're retiring for longer or we're working for longer. Getting the right rhythm over those decades can make us more productive and lead to more fulfilling contribution to our business, to our careers. And so as we talk through a lot of these concepts, understanding the rhythm that you're going through, the rhythm that you're then building in the organization, and how perhaps chasing an artificial balance is not necessarily the way to move forward. So what are some of these rhythms? What are some of these cycles? And the way I like to think about it is you've got some cycles which are quite small. They could be daily. Every day these things happen. We open up the business, we close the business. We turn the phones on, we turn the phones off. You know, back when I was starting on the front desk, you'd go and collect the mail in the morning and you drop off the mail in the afternoon. You do these daily cycles. And then there are others, particularly as we get through towards the end of this presentation, we start talking about economic cycles over 7 to 10 years, longer term economic cycles over 40 years, and the business life cycle over 25 years or more. These slow moving large cycles. And so this combination, daily, weekly, all the way through to multi-decade cycles, start running into each other. What we as managers and leaders need to be aware of in our business is how are we harnessing those cycles that we can control, and how are we being aware of those which are outside of our control, but which impact us and which we need to be prepared for. And how do we keep an eye on how these might be impacting us, so that if the economic cycle is pushing into our quarterly cycles, we've got the ability to be flexible, to move with the rhythm of the times. So I encourage you to think about your role and your business as we go through these business management rhythms. What are some of the key things which are a daily rhythm? And, you know, some of these, checking in on sick leaves, maybe there's some daily KPIs in your business. I'm a huge fan of the daily huddle for most businesses, to get that opportunity to come in and communicate a lot of information that otherwise might get missed, particularly around things like, you know, somebody's sick or we've got a big client project today or work due this week. Having that daily check-in with your team for 5 or 10 minutes can make a world of difference. How clear are the people responsible for these daily tasks, that this is part of the daily cycle? We can start to take it for granted, and then we start hiring new people, particularly for some of these more junior responsibilities. A lot of the daily tasks are more junior, around answering the phones, turning the phones on and off. It can be very easy to forget that they don't necessarily know that these are their daily expectations. That giving them an ideal day, a daily run sheet, so that they can manage these cycles day to day, can lead to a huge boost in their productivity and in getting work done. And a lot of the frustrations that can happen for us as managers, business owners, is when these little things aren't getting done consistently. Like any expectations, how well have we communicated that that is an expectation? This is something you will get done every day, or indeed every week, every month, every quarter. So what are the weekly cycles and rhythms in your business? What are some of the things that happen every week? Do you run payroll every week? I love pushing payroll to be less frequent than that. It is a big burden on a lot of organizations, but it's also you know, not something that makes me popular. If I suggest to a weekly payroll organization that they need to shift, maybe you've got Friday drinks or some cultural activities that happen every week. Maybe there's some of those other meetings. You've got daily huddles, but there might be things like sales meetings that happen every week. You're in that rhythm. What about monthly? What are some of the things that happen monthly in your organization? Are they clear? And at this point, are they scheduled? Do they actually happen on a rhythm? Because monthly is that tricky period of time where you can absolutely feel that something has to happen. You know when you haven't had, you know, the monthly marketing meeting, for example, all of those functional meetings, the different functions in the business. But it's also very easy because it feels like you've got a whole month to organize it, to not actually get to it. And so the monthly cycle means that some things can be lost if they're not getting put into that rhythm, if they're not getting scheduled. And I'm a huge fan of scheduling a lot of those meetings to get momentum in the business. My belief is that most businesses don't have enough meetings. You don't have enough opportunity to get teams together to communicate and make decisions. And that causes a lot of inefficiencies outside of the meeting, outside of that particular team. So getting them on a rhythm, the second Thursday of every month. These workshops that we're running, the Business Mastery for Leaders program this year, is the second Wednesday of every month. Monthly is the cadence that felt most appropriate for me to get into the rhythm. Not everyone's going to join every workshop, but it's there as an invitation, and it's at a regular time. So I know I've got to do it. And if it is helpful to you and your team, your business, you know that's something you can fit in to your rhythm. Once you start getting to quarterly and then annual, you certainly start shifting from that day-to-day operational focus into much more of the strategic rhythm. So every 90 days doing things like having a deep dive budget review. Are we on budget for that quarter? Were we below? Were we above? What do we need to change? And that's where things like, you know, economic cycles, business life cycles can start to show up. I say the only two timeframes that matter in a business are 20 years and 90 days. 20 years is that long term, whatever are you going, and 90 days is that action plan. So it is a quarterly rhythm. What is our focus for this quarter? What's the theme? What are the big rocks that we as a team are going to achieve this quarter? And perhaps where appropriate, how do we celebrate achieving those? And that then starts to get us into a rhythm of improvement. It's still cyclical. It's not we're going to build this block and then this block and then this block in a direct linear fashion. It's actually building in more of a rhythm. This is what we're working on over the next 90 days, building these rocks. And then we have an idea of what the next 90 days might be. We're going to come in and review. And maybe that's not the whole management team. Maybe that's more of the business owners making their decisions. Here's the next 90 days. Here's the next focus, the next rhythm. And so then as a leadership team and across a whole business, we can get into that rhythm of knowing there's always things that we're improving. There's always strategy that we're working on. The strategic plan is not just a thick document that sits in a drawer somewhere or sat in a Dropbox or a SharePoint file. It is part of the rhythm that we're living because we've got this as a cycle now, not just a standalone journey that sits beside our day-to-day functions. And of course, annually, reviewing some of those a lot of budgets have to be done annually, fit in with financial years, calendar years, and things like Christmas parties and other celebrations, salary reviews, training reviews, I generally suggest are two separate meetings held 6 months apart and build those rhythms. And we see here with some of this, we're forced into doing some of these rhythms, but some of these things can easily slip. And I've been in plenty of businesses that don't do a budget, that don't really plan that much for the next quarter or the next year. And then it's very easy to wake up 5 years later and nothing has changed. And if that's what you're wanting to stay the same, then that's fantastic. If you're trying to change things, it's not just enough to set a vision. It's not just enough to set a clear strategy from the top of an organization. You need to build in these daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual cycles, these rhythms where things get done, keep moving you forward, but moving you forward from these habits. We've had a few people who jumped in while I was running those, so I'll refresh a little bit around some of the questions that you might have. Do feel free to either unmute yourself, jump in with questions if you like, or to use the chat feature to shoot any questions that come through. And encourage you before we jump on to the next topic to just have a think about the cycles in your business. Are you running regular meetings for your team or for different areas of your business? Are you trying to jam them all into one big meeting every month that then has to cover far too much, nothing ever gets done? Are you clear? Here we are early in a new year, but also halfway through the first quarter. Are you clear as to what some of those quarterly focal points are for your business, some of the changes you're looking to implement this quarter? And as we look towards the end of the financial year here in Australia with a few months left, How clear are you on what are the things that are being achieved and completed this cycle, this rotation around the sun? And perhaps are you starting to think of what are some of the priorities for next year, for the next rhythm? Key warning that this next section is going to involve some maths. Again, I work with, primarily small and medium-sized business owners, private enterprise. Most of those 350 plus clients where I've gone to depth, and then even if I think of the however many more have come to conferences, workshops, and training that I've run, most people start their business because they're good at what they do. They might be a great plumber or they're a great accountant. Maybe an opportunity knocks on the door for them to go out and start their own business. Often they see a way that they could do something better, maybe do it more for themselves, keep more of the money themselves. But the focus is on what they're doing. What is that product or service at the business? They're not necessarily great at business. And it would make absolutely no sense to make everyone have to go and get an MBA before they could start their own business, for no other reason than most MBAs are actually focused on large corporations, which is a very, very different communication and decision-making environment to small and medium-sized businesses. And so most business owners find themselves learning a lot of these harder parts of the business on the fly as they start to grow. And there is nothing that holds back a business more than a misunderstanding of some of these cash flow cycles, especially when a business is looking to grow. It's very, very easy if you've never had profit and loss responsibility, budget responsibility, if you've never had your own business, or if you're, which we all like to do, and certainly a lot of the media likes to do, you're looking at big corporates and thinking about how much profit Coles and Woolworths are making at any point in time. It's very easy to just think about the profit and loss, the revenue minus the costs. You can hire someone for $80,000 a year and they go and do $160,000 a year worth of work and you make a profit. Obviously, there's a whole lot of other costs that come into that. But what's hidden from a lot of the financial reporting is this idea of how cash flows through a business, that the time it takes between spending money and actually getting a return. And the faster a business can move cash through the business, the more that cash cycles through the organization, the faster it can grow, and generally, the more profitable it will be. So let's go through these 6 different elements. Marketing cycle. Okay, a lot of small businesses don't do very much in marketing, and I know I've got some marketing managers sitting here on this course who are going to have these numbers fairly to hand. How long does it take when you're investing in a marketing initiative for that to start generating a lead? Now, that's going to vary. If you're doing search engine optimization at the back end of a website, that can be something that's slow and builds over a period of years. If it's a specific ad campaign, you might spend money today and get some inquiries tomorrow. And so looking at different marketing and lead generation sources can actually break down that marketing cycle more widely. If we think about it as an average, when we spend money, on average, how long does it take for that money to flow through marketing to actually create some leads? And then once you've got a lead, how long does that take until they turn into a client? Does it take 30 days to convert that client? Does it take less time? Does it take more time? This is for my business, that marketing and sales cycle is about 90 days combined, much like the example that's here. If I want clients in 3 months' time, then I need to be doing the activity now. Other businesses have a much faster sales cycle. The inventory cycle is less relevant for some organizations. Some businesses certainly do need to either hold stock, which reduces the inventory cycle. If you have stock on hand, if somebody comes in to buy a handbag and you have that handbag there, then there's 0 days in the inventory cycle. 0 days between sales and delivery, but you may have to hold that stock for longer, which means that that cash is being tied up. For other organizations, they only order the inventory once a sale is made, which means they're not having to hold stock in inventory, but the delivery cycle blows out. And it's understanding the difference in that combination as that might apply. And we can also, it's drawing a little bit of a long bow, but we can think of In a services business, trade business, a professional services business, you can sometimes think of the delivery staff as some of that inventory as well. It's making sure that you've got enough staff on hand to deliver the work that comes in. And maybe sometimes you've got them sitting around twiddling their thumbs, not being productive. And towards the end, these become a little bit easier to manage with today's accounting software. The billing cycle. Once you've actually delivered the work, how long does it take you to get an invoice out to actually bill that client? Does that work sit as not even WIP, work in progress, but actually as completed job in your business? Does it sit there for 2 weeks because you do an end of the month billing cycle? And once invoiced, how long on average until your customers pay? Now, in most organizations of a certain size, these kind of mid-size SMEs that I tend to work with, that most of you are a part of, a lot of these different areas of the business are run by different individuals. You'll have a marketing manager, you'll have a sales manager, you'll have somebody overseeing the operations and the delivery, you'll have an accounts department, and you may even have accounts in terms of the invoicing, getting the billing out might be different to the individual, or maybe even outsource the organization that runs the debtors reports, that chases the payment, that does the reconciliations at the end of the payment cycle. And so each of you can be sitting in your own little bubble feeling like it's not too bad. What's 15, 30 days between friends? But when you start adding it up as an overall organization, each of those different cycles combining for the full flow. And in those examples that I had there, 195 days or more, depending on how that inventory counts, is the time. So from the dollar that gets spent to start the marketing, through the sales that creates, just going straight to the delivery, getting the invoice out, bringing that payment in, takes 195 days to get that dollar back in to the business. As I say, a lot of those steps might be hidden. And this is hidden from the profit and loss because we spent $10 on marketing, various elements on the different employees and our accounting software. And of that $10 we spent, maybe that became $20 through the whole business, but it brought in $30 worth of work. So we had $10 profit. And that can feel fantastic, and that's a good outcome. But it's taken you 195 days to get that profit in. What if those numbers were different? What are those numbers in your business? How clear are you about the time it takes for money to flow through each of those steps? In a smaller business, you might be the one who's responsible for marketing and sales and potentially delivery and invoicing. I'm looking at some of you who are on this call. So that's on you. It's easy enough to go, how long does it take me to do marketing to get a lead? How long does it take me to get an invoice out after I do the work? And you can understand it. In a larger organization, you might need to sit there as a broader management team, or have the business owner run a little bit of a project on this to understand those differences, and then to start asking the question, how do we make those cycles faster? How do we get the flow of money moving faster through the whole business? I've got a couple of examples coming up. I think I've got a slide that comes up towards the end, but sort of reiterates that point, which is, if it takes you 195 days, then that on average means that your money moves through the business 1.4 times a year. If you can get that to 2 times or to 3 times, if you can understand how your business model has some opportunities in that, then that can rapidly accelerate growth. Otherwise, you're making that investment in the new people, new products, new marketing ideas, and not getting that return. And this can be, as I say, warning about numbers. It can be a little bit tricky to know exactly what those numbers are. And often in small, medium-sized businesses, close enough is good enough. Getting that perfection can take far longer than the return, the value you're actually going to get. But here's an understanding of some different business models to just help you understand how these cycles could play out and what opportunities you might have in your organization. So this is a COD, cash on delivery trade business. So they go out, they do the job, they get paid. So marketing cycle, It's going to depend a little bit on the brand, how good a marketing manager they've got, where their focus is. Are they doing longer term marketing as well as short term lead generation, getting that balance right? But let's say it takes 30 days. Marketing campaign, people out in the marketplace might need to see a few ads while they're thinking about this to have somebody come out and have a pest inspection on their property. So that takes 30 days. Once they pick up the phone or they jump onto your AI chatbot, they can convert fairly quickly. So that's a nice one. They're ready to go. They come pre-qualified, often pre-sold, so you can sell them fairly quickly. Maybe there's a need to go out on site, do an inspection. That could take a few days. And that's where a lot of trade businesses will then differ. Some will hold the cash flow to have some salespeople or some reps that can go out and do a sale quickly when it pops up. Others will want everybody out doing delivery because that's the most profitable. But it means when an opportunity knocks, the best salespeople might be booked for a week, take a week to go out and do that sales cycle. Not necessarily a right or wrong, it's just understanding those different decisions. So we go and we get the sale, we book it in. It does take that week to get out there and deliver it because we're good. Maybe we are holding a whole lot of stock in the background, and so that's not holding us up. And then it's cash on delivery. We go out and do the work. And so we get out there and we do the work, give them the invoice, give them the FPOS machine, they pay immediately. And so that red, the back end administration, is 0 days. And so now it's 11 days here from the inquiry to getting that cash back. The marketing running in the background, so there's a bit more of an investment up front. But if you can get into that cycle, 11 days, then that money's going to be flowing through a whole lot more. Compared to this, a professional services business, maybe this is an accounting business where the marketing cycle is much longer. Clients need a lot more nudging, a lot of awareness, a lot of brand awareness, as well as the specific call to action. The sales cycle can be much longer. Changing accountants is less painful than most people realize, but it can be quite a painful thing. And it's a hard breakup to do. Your accountant, as a business owner, is often one of the few people you really trust outside of your team. And so breaking up with them can be hard to do, can be a lot of forward and backward steps. So this professional service takes a long time to get that sale on. And then you've got to actually do the work, bring that client on, and maybe they've got a specific need, which is hours of time in an organization that has hundreds of clients. And this was always a thing that killed me when I was a partner at a professional services in an accounting firm. People would get the work done, and rather than raising an invoice straight away, they'd wait for our end of the month kick up the bum to actually get those invoices out. And so that's money that we could be bringing into the business sooner. We don't even ask the client for it for 2 weeks. And then we might ask the client to give us 30 days notice, and on average they take 45, because what are you going to do? My tax return's already been lodged. You can't unlodge it for me. So they can be a little bit lazy around that. And so in this case, 255 days, that's that very, very slow cycle of cash through the business. The 1.4 times per annum versus how do we change that? We might not be able to change some of the marketing, but if we can get that sales cycle done faster, we can use some of the tools that are out there to get that client on board. We can deliver the work and get the invoices out faster, be more efficient, and be tighter with our debtors. Maybe we start offering 14 days, knowing that some will still take 30 days, but that's still better than 45 days. Maybe we offer a discount for on-time payment, obviously building that into our overall prices. So I find offering a discount on-time payment has a better response than offering a fine or a punishment or an admin fee for late payment. You can do the math, so those are effectively the same thing. It's just people generally like a discount more than they like a fine. And so you tweak a few things through there, and suddenly that cash is coming twice per annum. And if you can improve the marketing cycle, becoming more targeted, the marketing activity, generating more leads more often, and that can change to putting that money through 3 times. Now, a couple of other different business models. I won't go through these in as much detail. By all means, ask any questions if there's any that pop up around how this might apply in your business. This is a holiday resort. Maybe this is the surf resort in Fiji. Long marketing cycle to convince people to come and stay at your resort. Maybe the sales cycle, they send some questions, they want to see some more photos, get some more information. The inventory cycle, might be 20 years you're sitting on that resort waiting to sell some of those rooms. The delivery cycle is the week that they come out. One of the nice things about this business model is that billing and payment cycle is the general understanding. Customers, when they go to a hotel, is they might have to pay entirely up front. We might have to pay a deposit. And then the last one, why Appa, Amma, Goobook are going to rule the world, why a lot of these software as a service, subscription SaaS businesses work, is they're doing a lot of marketing at the point of sale. They've got a very quick sales cycle. So they're getting people in. Maybe there's a free trial which drags that on. Maybe it's a very, very fast decision. They don't have to hold a lot of inventory. It's all delivered instantly. The marginal cost of delivery for a lot of those SaaS products is negligible. So the gross profit margin for every extra client is enormous. One of the interesting things around AI, because AI requires much more intensive, expensive computer chips, is that marginal cost per client is less the case at the moment. That's why NVIDIA is now to the point where I think I saw this week it's worth as much as Google. I think that's a short-term bubble by virtue of the fact that they're a market leader in that emerging space and will be caught up. But it's so much more expensive to run the AI computer chips that you can't just give it away like Google can give away Gmail or Amazon can give away some AWS credits. And you're generally getting zero-day billing payment cycles. You're getting people to put their credit card into your website. Most of us don't have the benefit of running a SaaS business. If you've got a more traditional services business, then you aren't going to be able to get to a 1 or a 2 day cash flow cycle. And I have seen businesses that have managed to have negative cash flow cycles. One of the businesses I worked with, which is one of my favorite case studies because it makes me look good, they grew from $1 million a year, which is when they engaged me and my team. 12 months later, they were doing $1 million per month. So we essentially grew 12-fold within a year. And the way they managed to do that was a negative cash flow cycle. So they were retailing mobile phone contracts. And so they had to give the phone, they had to give the contract. The telco that they were licensed to sell would pay them within 14 days. The phones that they needed were on 30-day terms. So they got payment within 14 days for every new client they put on. They only had to pay their stock every 30 days. So they were getting paid 2 weeks before they actually had to put any money in, outside of some of the sales team that they had. And so every month, the more they sold, the more free cash flow was sitting there, the faster they could grow. Certainly not something we could do for every business, but it is possible and something to have a think about. So having a think about your business, is it a good use of your time to have a think about the areas you're responsible for, and just think, how long does it take for work and therefore money to flow through my area of the business? And when I step back and look at my business overall, where are there perhaps some bottlenecks in one or more of these 6 areas where cash is getting tied up in the business, where we might still be profitable, but we're restricting our growth because we're choking some of the cash flow through the business? And what are some of the things that we could do as leaders in our business to improve that? And they may not feel like all that much, but when you've got 6 different cycles, finding 1 or 2 days even for each of them, that adds up to potentially 2 weeks a year, the money flowing through 2 weeks faster. And on an aggregate scale across all of your clients and those clients that you want in the future as your business grows, there is a real opportunity to hugely improve your business, your growth, without impacting profit margins, just by improving these cash flow cycles and being mindful for them. So a quick check-in at the halfway point. So far, we've talked about those different ways of viewing time, the linear time, the flow, and the cycles, the rhythms. We're focusing on the cycles and rhythms in your business. How do you make them more efficient? How do you make them tighter? Whether that's the daily cycle of opening and closing the business, whether that's monthly, quarterly, annual. And we've looked in more detail at these 6 different cash flow cycles, that flow and cycle of money going through your business. And are there ways to make those cycles tighter, more efficient? There's a whole separate conversation around how do you improve customer service in these areas? How do you not just make the money flow faster, but give your clients a better experience through all of these, which is how you can then add more profit, more margin on top. And I work with some specialists that do exactly that. They come in from that angle. How do we improve the customer experience along these steps? Because if the customer experience is better, then maybe that can improve the cash flow cycle as well. The next 2 topics that we're going to talk about are some now of these longer term cycles that can impact the business, that are fundamentally outside of your control, but are absolutely something where you have the ability to influence how they impact your business and your career. The first of these is the economic cycle, getting a little bit less attention now than it certainly has for the last 3 or 4 years. It's something to be mindful of because it is a cycle. We sit there in good times thinking it's going to last forever and get surprised when it's tough. We sit there in tough times thinking that that's never going to change, and it inevitably does. And I like to think of the economic cycle, it's broken out into this rhythm, but I again like to look at the feelings, the emotions that go through that. Emotions have an outsized impact on small and medium-sized businesses. It's very difficult to walk into the boardroom of BHP or Telstra and say, how are you all feeling? Gut feel, what is it that we should do? You need to have the data. And that's where that MBA kind of conversation and tools can come in. Small businesses, how you feel today is going to impact how you go with your team. How the business owner feels is going to impact the quality of the decisions, the investments that they make over this quarter. And how the economy is going has a big impact on how you're feeling. The peaks and the troughs, the 2 cliches, at the top, what I call 12 o'clock on the clock, 12 o'clock there, it's euphoria. This is fantastic. This is going to last forever. That's the point of maximum financial risk for an organization. The analogy I draw is a car that's driving at 200 kilometers down a highway. You know at that speed that it is inevitable that that car is going to crash eventually. You might not know what the cause is. Like, is a tire going to blow out? Is the driver going to get a mobile phone alert and look down? Is a bird going to fly in the window and knock them out? You're not quite sure what's going to trigger that crash. But when the economy is going that fast, getting overheated, you know that that crash is inevitable. And if you're not aware that that's potentially going to happen at some point, that's when you get caught, and getting caught is the financial risk. You're investing too much in the business and you get caught, and that cash flow cycle dries up. The flip side of that is the point of maximum financial opportunity, which is 6 o'clock on the clock, when everybody is despondent, has given up, feels like this recession or this economic downturn is going to last forever. That's when there's often the greatest opportunity to grab market share, to grab employees, to look at how you get a step or 2 ahead of your competitors, so that when the cycle inevitably picks up again, those businesses that are waiting get left behind. Your business is moving ahead. And the famous investing aphorism is to buy when there's blood on the streets, which is often down here. Not always a good idea. It depends exactly what you're buying. Sometimes the blood on the streets is not going to get cleaned up, different industries. So a useful question, and you're welcome to jump into the chat if you've got some thoughts on this or ponder how it might be for you and your organization. Where are we today? Thanks, Suan. Yeah, where are we now? You're good at this, workshop stuff, Suan, and you know exactly what we're doing. How are we feeling? I'll loop back to that one. Do you feel like, let's be honest, we had a pandemic-led recession in 2020. It was the first official recession Australia had in 30 years. It wasn't really much of a recession. If every recession's like that, then we can have them more often. That'd be fantastic, especially if you're in the business of selling houses. But we still did actually have a recession. I've got a lot of videos on my YouTube channel, Don't Waste a Good Recession, where we go through this journey and how it happens and how to respond. And then there's been a lot of talk through 2022, 2023 around, is there worse to come? Were we just 4 or 5 o'clock and we're just waiting for the inevitable next step? Or have we managed to have a soft landing? This wasn't too bad, and actually we're picking up. And certainly you look at a lot of the information that's coming out of the US, where Standard & Poor's 500, the S&P 500, which is one of the indexes for measuring the stock market, closed about 5,000 for the first time ever, all-time record highs. Unemployment is still ridiculously low. But interestingly, things like business confidence and consumer confidence are still behind. Australia has some similar things. Inflation is coming back down. Interest rates are still historically fairly low. But there's a lot of still concern and worry going on in the economy. For me, I think we're sitting here around about 8 or 9 o'clock now. I think there is good cause for broader optimism. I don't think we're by any stretch yet at the excitement phase of the economic cycle, but it's certainly looking at the data and listening to a whole lot of other business and government leaders. We seem to have come through the lowest point of this depression, and we have moved beyond hope. Of course, things can happen. Nobody predicted the COVID-19 pandemic, which can obviously shake things up. But even then, there's a huge difference between the pandemic happening when we're at 12 o'clock and a pandemic happening when we're at 8 or 9 o'clock from an economic perspective. And so that's useful to be aware of. For your business, there would have been strategies towards the peak of the last boom, 2017, 2018, 2019. There would have been marketing activities, sales processes, products, team members that worked out at that point in the economic cycle. And doing the same thing again today doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get the same success, because we're at a different point. And it's worth noting that even though this is a cycle, and I talk a little bit about the clock and the numbers on the clock, we don't go through these steps in the same time frame. Sometimes we might sit, and I think we will, to the extent we've possibly been sitting 7, 8, 9 o'clock for the last 12 months, we will probably be sitting here for at least another 12 months, depending on a few macroeconomic factors. It is going to be a little bit of time before there's a whole lot of excitement coming back into the economy. When it comes, be aware of it. And the key to responding to the economic cycle, rather than being at effect of the economic cycle, when things change, you've got to be prepared to respond. And if you find yourself in a downturn or an upturn, it's taking the time to plan through the next phase of the cycle, to execute at the right time. And if you're executing, as I was saying earlier, ahead of the competition, that means you can ride a whole lot of the profit. And I still do get to meet with some businesses that haven't really planned for how this uplift part of the economic cycle is going to be different. They're waiting for those indicators. They're doing a wait and see approach. It's only once they're excited that they're actually going to start planning and investing. And that's a huge mistake. That's as much of a mistake as sitting in a downturn thinking that everything's going to be fine, burying your head in the sand, not looking at your financial numbers and hoping it goes away. Missing out on the opportunity is as or even more expensive. And the slides that I've got, which I'll send around with the recording, go into a little bit more detail around, the ups and downs of these cycles. On average, about every 10 years, we go through an economic cycle in the West. And some businesses, when they get punched by that downturn, they will dive and they will not come back. They were already struggling, perhaps, or they were in an economy or sector that gets completely wiped out as a result of the efficiency changes that come. Many businesses just survive. They follow the economic cycle down, they follow it back up. And those that are aware of these cycles are the ones that might still take a blow when there is a downturn, because even though we might know it's coming, we know the car's doing 200 kilometers an hour, we know that something's going to happen. we can't necessarily predict exactly what or when. And that car might do 200 kilometers an hour for 12 months longer than we think is even possible. The economy can stay irrational far longer than you can stay solvent if you're betting against it. So you can't necessarily avoid getting hit, but you can be prepared to respond and respond faster so that you benefit, at least from a market share perspective, going through that cycle. And the key difference is around when you're investing, and also comes back to that emotional awareness that I talk about so much. The businesses that dive during the economic cycle are the ones that ignore how they're feeling. Some level, they are worried, they are anxious, they are panicking, they're depressed, and the business owner just feels if they can bury that all away, the team won't notice. Those of you who have emotional business owners will know that no matter how much they try and hide those feelings, it still comes out, it still bleeds out. And the worst thing a business owner can do, and the worst thing you can do as a leader of people in your business when things are changing, whether it's the economic or any other circumstances, is pretend that you can hide your emotions from them, because you can't. You're a human. You're just exuding emotions when you go into meetings, get on the phone call, send an email, and they can feel that. And if you're not clear about why you're feeling that, then they'll start making up their own stories about what's going on for you. So you have a bad morning, the alarm doesn't go off, the kids don't get dressed for school, you almost hit the cat in the driveway on the way out, you get every red light on the way into work, you go in with that energy. Very, very different to the day where everything runs smoothly. You go in feeling fantastic. You go in with that terrible energy, and it's just because of the alarms and the kids, and you just haven't had a chance to shake it off. If you hide it, you go in the office, you close your door, you get cranky, you send a few cranky emails. The team doesn't know that your kids were playing up this morning. The team might start thinking that there's something going on because, there was that client yesterday that put in that complaint about the big project. Maybe you're really annoyed because it's going to be really expensive. Maybe somebody's, going to cop it. Maybe you're going to have to sack someone for stuffing up on that job. You've sorted the job. You've forgotten about the job, but the team are going to make up stories because they can only feel. So you can't ignore your emotions. Nor in that yellow can you just react to them like a brick wall. Stuff comes in and you just fly off the handle. What you need to practice as a leader, and this is a topic for a whole other session, is being able to be aware of these cycles, be aware of your emotions, acknowledge when you're feeling them, and not get attached to them. Let them go. Keep making decisions and keep being mindful. And that's the key. It's these investments, but it's also how business leaders manage their emotions that dictates the outcome they have going through the economic cycle. Said I didn't want to spend too much time because it's a little bit less exciting and relevant than perhaps it was 12 months ago when I'd get a lot of questions on this topic. If you do have some questions around the economic cycle, do feel free to jump them in, particularly if you agree, disagree with feeling that we're at that optimism point. Do you feel there's a little bit worse to come? Is your industry or your sector somewhat counter-cyclical, or does it lag or lead the broader economy? Those are other cycles to be aware of. Insolvency lawyers are gearing up for boom times at the moment because there's a whole lot of zombie businesses from the COVID recession, which were kept alive by JobKeeper and BAS refunds and some of these kind of government initiatives, the furlough program in the UK. Now they're getting their heads lopped off because they're zombies. They're not actually viable. And so insolvency lawyers are ahead. They're having a great time. The final cycle that I wanted to go through amongst all of these this morning is the business life cycle. And this is a much longer journey that all private enterprise go through. They go through the same journey. And the reason why I say that with confidence is that this isn't about head count, employee numbers, profit margin, some of those kind of financial elements to the business journey. This is about the emotions, the emotional journey that a business owner has in relationship with their business. And as managers and leaders, we too go through this on a slightly more muted note. We go through this in relation to our emotions in relationship with our employer or our business. And so understanding how the business is going through this cycle and how we are individually going through this cycle can help us to have some awareness around those feelings. We might be feeling some of these feelings, and I'll run through a list, and we feel all of these feelings all of the time. But these underlying feelings can be impacting us. We can choose whether we react to those feelings or whether we are able to acknowledge them. I'm feeling really, worried right now. I'm in despair about my business, but I can put that in my pocket. I can park that separately and apply some of these business tools so it doesn't get in the way. Otherwise, communication decision making can be terrible. So the journey that businesses go through, 4 phases: start up, scale up, step up, and sell up. And as I get to sell up, I'll reiterate that you've got a few options there as a business. You don't necessarily have to sell. That can be the opportunity to leverage to go around again. So what's the emotions? There's more nuance to this. I have been and helped facilitate a 2-day conference just on this framework. So there's a lot of nuance that can come into play. But the understanding piece is the simplest. Startup business, day one, right at the beginning, it's exciting. Fantastic, I'm doing it. I've got this business rolling. How very, very exciting. And that very quickly leads to overwhelm. And that overwhelm can lead to the trough of sorrow. We start a business with our own energy. It's an investment, perhaps of money, definitely of time. Usually, at the very least, you have to take some kind of pay cut, sacrifices that you've got to make, time with your family, time with your hobbies, to invest in the business. You're putting energy into the business. Blue is revenue in my world. Business will only work if the revenue starts coming back in. And at a certain point, the energy you've put in will run out. And if the energy from that revenue is not coming back, that's when you take that dip and can get stuck there. Half of all businesses in Australia, and it's a similar number around the world, half of all businesses fail in the first 3 years. And this is where they fail. They don't get that business model working. They don't get the revenue coming back in. The energy dips back down here under the line, and they just don't have the energy to push forward to keep going. Those businesses that do, they invest, they get the business model right, they move into scale up. Scale up can be a 7 to 10 year journey, particularly in that confidence and then relaxed. I'm confident this is going to work. I just need to do these things. And then the relaxed, good times of reinvesting in growth. It's profitable, the cash flow is good, and you can work slowly but surely towards that bigger vision. And this is where I love businesses in this space because they have the time and money to invest and the willingness to learn. How do we build all of these cycles? Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual cycles. How are we investing in those in the business to make it more efficient, more profitable as we grow, and to make that vision even bigger? And a lot of businesses can see that end coming, and that's where they get bought out or they decide to sell. And that's a fantastic outcome. It's one of the 2 places to sell. It's just not the most common place where a business owner wants to sell because they think it's going to last forever. But they get to the top of this roller coaster and achieve their vision. They feel this euphoria, and then they can dip down. That's a really good question. Can a business be stuck in that startup for more than 3 years? Absolutely. I'll talk about averages, and I'll pull up some slides in a few minutes to just sort of reiterate those. You can be stuck. The size of your vision will dictate how long you spend down there. If you want to be a global multinational business, then you're going to need much bigger investments. So that can take longer. And if you're not getting the business model quite right, if you don't have that product market fit, if you're not getting the sustainable sales, then you can get stuck there for a lot longer. And that's where, as a business owner, you've got to make sometimes the tough decision. It's like, either what do I need to change? What's the next investment of energy and money that I need to put in that's going to get that change and get me into scale up? Or is this business model just not working at all? And I'm better off licking my wounds, becoming a business statistic, but as a human, still being perfect and lovable, and either finding the next thing, which is going to excite me, or I've worked with a lot of business owners that have done this 2, 3, 4, 5 times before they've hit on the one that's big enough to engage me. Do I need to go lick my wounds, go and get a job, be the best employee that someone's had, because I can go there, and even if it's only for 12 months, I am worth so much more than what they're paying me, but I get that energy back, and I get that cash flow back, and I can start working on the next thing. And that can be one of the hardest and bravest decisions that a business owner can make if they're stuck there. It's going, this is not the right thing. What's next? And then there's a lot more of a detailed chat around how do you know which is which, and how do you feel? How confident are you really feeling? So that scale up doesn't last forever. Sometimes getting out, as that question was sort of asking, can feel like you're at the back of the freight train trying to push the freight train up the hill. Suddenly you can get to the point in business where you're strapped to the front of the freight train. It's driving you. You're getting a lot of employees coming in and they're overwhelmed, they're inefficient. You've got a whole lot of those frustrations coming. And so that journey can dip to frustration and to despair. You can get stuck here. This is where a lot of business owners call me and say, I want to sell. I want to get out. And often the business is not worth very much because it's very inefficient at this point. And you can feel it. Stepping into a step up despair business is like stepping out of air conditioning on a muggy February day in Singapore, right? It's like, it is just, you can feel that energy. And if someone was trying to buy that business, then they can feel that energy. They know they're either going to get a bargain or they're going to get a whole lot of headaches because the business owners are dragging the team along with that. But that doesn't last forever either. Eventually the business perseveres. You start to realize either other cycles change in the background and things just improve, or that leadership team go, we're going to do something different. And we can either work out how to do the right things to get out faster, or we can just try 100 things and see what works. But you start to get that shift, start to get that change. The optimism kicks in. Eventually you head back up over the line and into that sell-up phase. The optimism becomes hope, very similar to that economic cycle. And up here at the peak of the sell-up phase, which is often the best time to sell a business, the business owner is proud. They can look back at the journey that they've been on and feel proud of what they've managed to build alongside their leadership team to create that outcome. And that feels pretty darn good. But even that is just part of the cycle, part of the rhythm. Because eventually those leaders, business owners, the ones who are crazy enough to start this business, to keep investing through the peaks and troughs, start to go, well, okay, I'm feeling pretty content. I'm feeling pretty calm. I'm not, stand on a mountain, beat my chest kind of thing anymore. I'm certainly not feeling a bit lousy around it all. I'm feeling pretty calm. But now I'm starting to question, what's next? What's the next opportunity? And as I say, some will sell to pursue the next opportunity. They realize they don't have the energy to move this business. Maybe they get the management team to even buy them out, or they look to scale it up. Let's go interstate, international. Let's expand into other industries. Or maybe they keep this business rolling and they go down a portfolio approach. What's the next business that I can invest in for me? And those big decisions lead back to fresh, new excitement about what's moving forward. So if you think about your business, the organization that you're a part of, where in that journey are you? How are you feeling? I know some of you have seen this presented in a few different ways. We can draw in some brick walls where businesses can get stuck. The most important thing about the business life cycle is not being attached to those feelings. This is something that I show 90+% of the new clients, new introductions that I meet, people who come into my website or by referral, say, how do you help me? I show them this, because often they're in this trough of sorrow, or they're feeling frustrated, despairing, or they're questioning, uncertain, and they're judging themselves for those emotions. Because very, very few business owners get up on stage at a conference or jump onto TikTok or Instagram and say, hey, look, just so everyone knows, I'm absolutely in the trough of sorrow today and I don't want to get out of bed. And every time my team asks me a question, I want to bite their effing heads off. And I just want to go home early, sit under my doona and cry. No one would hire that person to deliver a keynote at a conference or as a guest on their podcast. And so we, as real business owners who are going through that, feel like we must be doing something wrong. You're not. This is absolutely normal and natural cycle that you're going through. And being aware of that, and if you're one of the leaders in the business, being aware that your business owner may be having some of these feelings, and that's normal. In fact, when we look at the step up phase, most businesses don't even get that far. You have to be really successful to feel that bad. And so being aware of that, to a degree, cutting them some slack, or just having that awareness so that you can respond is hugely important. And often, wherever you are in this cycle, there's a few places where you want to stay there. If you're relaxed, you probably want to hang around there longer. Keep investing, keep improving the business. Don't go looking for that big shiny new house, that's going to pay you back, achieve that vision. Look for how you can invest if you want to stay there. Similarly, up in pride, feel proud, empower your team, keep investing in the skills of your team. Can help you to stay there and not necessarily move forward. But other places you want to get out. You want to get out of that trough of sorrow as quickly as you can. You want to get out of that despair, at the very least, to get to optimism. So how do you do it? I'll make myself disappear on that screen so that you can just sort of have a quick read. I'm not going to go through all of these because I can't talk as fast as you can read, and there's nothing worse than death by PowerPoint. Plus, to reiterate, you'll get a video copy of this with the slide deck as well. What have you got to do to make that change? Who is it that can help you at this point in time? And what is that target? So that question to ask if you're stuck in the trough of sorrow, what does relaxed look like? Am I really clear on what it is that I'm trying to build right now? Could I sit there and write down on a page, I've got business partners, if I've got managers, could we sit down together and say, okay, we will feel relaxed in this business when it looks like this? Because that's then what you've got to focus on building, and perhaps giving yourself a deadline of I'm going to achieve that, or we need to start thinking again. Scale up, as I said, on average 7 to 10 years. Some businesses go through it way too fast. Some businesses can stay there a little bit longer. There are risks, priorities, and this is where you really want to start getting more strategic guidance as a business owner, because fairly quickly you get to that point where you are bigger, more profitable than the vast majority of businesses in the country. And so learning from your peers, learning from your own mistakes becomes much riskier. There's just fewer other examples out there. Getting the right advisors around you who work with people in that space can help you learn from the experience of others instead of having to make all the mistakes yourself. On average, step up business 5 to 7 years, often because they're burying their head in the sand, they're drowning in the stuff, they've got no personal vision or direction, and as a result, they don't go looking for guidance. Maybe that's that blame game they're putting on themselves, or it's just that despair of, I just can't see what I'm doing today, let alone thinking ahead for the future and who can help me. And so they can get stuck there. The ones that move through it faster are absolutely those ones who hopefully have some awareness, but who are, again, getting some of that outside energy and outside support. And then the sell up phase is around what is the next opportunity? How big is this business going to go? And am I here for that journey, or am I looking somewhere else? There's no right or wrong. There's certainly no judgment around these feelings, as long as you can take the awareness and apply that within your business. We are now at the last chance for questions. If anybody else needs to jump in or pop anything into the chat, I'm just going to go through and make sure I haven't missed anything in the chat. And then to bring down the summary, we have covered a lot, from 25 plus year business cycles to who's closing and locking up the office door this afternoon, and a whole lot of things in between. So if your brain kind of feels like that, I don't blame you. Hopefully, even if you haven't taken everything in, there's a few little things there that are specific and relevant to you right now. And that's why I started this program and have for years been doing this alumni support, is because you can't pick up, remember, and apply absolutely everything, especially around some of these cycles that are, annual, decades long. It's just not relevant. You're not going to remember it. And then in 2 years, 3 years, it becomes relevant. You want to be able to go back and grab those tools and go, okay, how does that apply? What can I do with that? And so being able to pick up the phone and call your ridiculously good-looking business coach has been my solution. At a certain point across 14 countries, that doesn't work. And so now building out having these recordings and tools available for you and your team is part of it. So feel good for getting 3/4 of what you've seen today, as long as you grab the bits that are most relevant. What have we covered? We often think of time as linear. That is just a cultural thing. It's not right or wrong any more than wearing a suit to work is right or wrong. It just is what is in our environment. And we have the opportunity to learn from others. I'm not going to rock up in a kimono anytime soon, but I absolutely now think much more in terms of those cycles and rhythms, not just the linear go and hunt the kangaroo. Because businesses have natural rhythms, we as humans have natural rhythms. And if we work within those, we get more efficient, we get greater outcomes. Do let me know in the feedback that we'll send around as well if I was far too boring or not clear enough around those cash flow cycles. That's one of the more complicated topics to understand. It's a little bit like swimming. You can read a book, you can read a whole lot of books, you can watch a whole lot of YouTube videos, but until you actually jump in the pool, it's hard to really understand what swimming looks and feels like and how to do it well. And cash flow cycles, often understand them intellectually. It's only once we get into a business and wonder where all the money has gone, how all that money is drying up, showing up, drying up all over the shop. It's only once we really jump in and get that emotional experience that we can understand either how they work or that at least they do work, and there are some challenges there. I think the biggest actions for you to take away from today are those cycles in business, daily, monthly, quarterly, annual. Are there some things there that you can do better or your team can do better? And to the extent that you impact the cash flow through the business, are there some things, small or large, you can do to reduce the time that cash spends flowing through your part of the business, because that has an outsized effect. And then we went through two things that we have less control over, but which through awareness we can better manage within our business. That economic cycle, which seems to be picking up, and the business life cycle, which will be different for each of you. And as you start to understand all of those different cycles, you can start to see how they can clash and how different businesses can have different outcomes. You can be confident heading into that relaxed phase of the business life cycle right as the economy tanks. And that's going to be a very different experience for you, particularly if you don't have some of those other cycles. And on the flip side, you might get lucky. You might hit that despair of step up right at the time that the economy starts to head up into excitement and thrill. And through no actions on your behalf, except the fact that you've managed to build a business and keep it alive for 17 years to get to step up, the economy gives you a boost, and that pushes all of this energy into your business and it pushes you out. Control the things that you can control. Don't be at effect of the things that are outside of your control. Be aware of and acknowledge your emotions and the impact that has on your decision-making quality and your communication as a leader. And by all means, as you move through some of these cycles, do feel good about reaching out to me, email, WhatsApp, text message, phone call, whatever it might be, to have a conversation about where your organization is at. And if there's perhaps some things that I might be able to see that can help give you that little bit of a nudge. Thank you for all of the kind comments. I don't see any other questions for today. And so I am going to wrap up the very, very first of these Business Mastery for Business Leaders sessions. A short reminder, we'll be running these on the second Wednesday of every month. So next month in March, I think off the top of my head, it will be the 13th of March, because we have 29 days in February this year. 13th of March, Wednesday the 13th of March, 9:30 to 11 a.m. Queensland time. And the topic next time looks at revenue. 8 different ways that revenue leaks out of a business. We've talked a bit about cash flow. That'll get a little bit more granular about how we make sure that that revenue is large and profitable and not leaking out of your business. So I look forward to seeing some of you and some others when I come back next month. thank you all again. Bye.